Hey, Jason.
Hello, sir.
Hey, really good to talk to you. Big fan, as everybody in the whole world is.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure that's true, Bobby, but thank you very much.
Last night I was online and I was playing poker, and I knew I was going to get to talk to you today, which I was super excited about. And I was playing, and I haven't played poker in a long time, but because of what's happening, we're all in our houses. I'm looking for stuff to do, and I thought, because I know you were a big poker player. I don't know if you still are, but are you into it big time right now or no?
It's hard to be into it big time because you can't really you can't play in bigger games, and I never really played in bigger games anyway because my wife is very firm about the idea that if I'm going to risk more than a thousand or $2, I could be giving it to some worthy person or cause rather than the other schmucks at the table playing poker with me. So I tend to play charity tournaments, fundraiser tournaments, and when I do play, I play every day. I play in an online app, which is real people. You do buy the chips, but you can't really make any money by playing, so it doesn't have that stake to it. But I play every day to work on the skills, and there has suddenly been a real rise in online poker fundraising and charity work. I know there are two sites that have been able to sponsor those kinds of games, and I've been playing in those, and that's been tremendous fun to get reconnected with the poker world without being damaged too badly and doing some good things at the same time. So it works out well.
Have you ever competed in the World Series of Poker?
I did. I played seven. I played 7 times, 7 consecutive years, and then I hadn't been able to play for almost 7 or 8 years because I was always working in the summer. I played 7 times. I think the furthest I got, I was probably about 150 to 200 seats outside of being paid any kind of money, and I always would get taken out with. Of the 7 times I play, I think I busted out of the series 4 times with pocket aces and twice with pocket jacks. Now, you deserve to get slapped in the head with pocket jacks, but the pocket aces were heartbreakers every time.
Did you feel like because you were famous, though, there was a bounty on you where people wanted to say they knocked out Jason Alexander?
I never felt it. I'm sure it's true. I mean, it's more of a story than I knocked out a guy in a hat. To be able to say I knocked out somebody whose name might be recognized. I actually found that for reasons that make no sense, the players at the table gave me credit for much more skill than I actually have. I earned some sort of strange respect because I've won a couple of charity tournaments that they'd seen me play online, and they think that I'm better than I am. They were always fun. The games were always fun. The people were always really cool. I've enjoyed it every time. I know people do, but I don't think I've ever had a bad experience at a poker table as far as the social element of the game and meeting wonderful people and having a good time. I've certainly lost more money than I care to recount, but the experience has always been good.
When I mentioned you were going to come on the show and how big of a fan that I am and have been for a long time, I started to get a lot of messages going, hey, met him at an airport, or hey, he spoke at our company's event. And I'm telling you, this almost never happens. Every single one of them talked about just how kind of a guy that you are.
Oh.
And so I guess I wonder, like, when you're going into a public place, are you going, all right, I gotta make sure that everybody around me feels good after they leave, because in the social media age, everybody's gonna have a story.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not quite as calculated as that. I've always been well aware that I'm a product, and I'm constantly trying to sell some version of my product to my buyers. My buyers are the audience, the people. So. And the fact that the things that I do excite anybody or make people happy, and then they want to come up and express that or share it in some way, you can't be having a bad day when people do that. It is not fair to people to not come through for them when all they want to do is express some kind of thanks or gratitude or share an experience that they've had because of something you've been part of. To not respond to that in some sort of appreciative way is kind of a dick thing to do. You know. Now there are times where you just don't have the time, or I'm with other people and it's not fair to them. But for the most part, when I go out in public, if I don't have a really timely agenda, and people are nice enough to approach me, I try to I try to make it an experience. First of all, I'm honored and I'm flattered that people do that, but I also want to make it an experience where they go, hey, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I got up the gumption or took my time to go over and say something to that guy because I wanted to share a moment with him, and so it becomes a nice exchange. And the fact that if that is in fact my reputation, then I'm delighted. My parents in heaven would go, we raised him well, by God.
Do any folks come up to you and literally think your name is George and call you Hey George?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've had more people. Some of whom I even sometimes I'll start a new job and you're all introduced and it's Jason, and on the second or third day of work somebody goes, so George, oh, I'm so sorry, man. I go, no, happens all the time. The only thing that I don't do, and if people have been on the receiving end of this, they may go, he's not such a nice guy, is sometimes if I'm in a public place and somebody's trying to get my attention by yelling out, George, hey George, I hear it, but I don't turn around and acknowledge it. And the reason I don't is that so many times when Seinfeld started to become popular and that started to happen, I would turn around and go, hey, yeah, how you doing? And they would actually be calling for somebody named George who was, around me, but not me. And I would feel like such a dummy that I said, okay, please don't think the whole world is, just is calling out for your character every minute of every day. So if they come up to me, I definitely respond no matter what they call me. But if they just yell out George, I go, it could be another guy.
You mentioned the early days. Was that show more, because, again, I remember when it started, was it more of a crawl to a sprint, or was it kind of a rocket ride for you personally?
I think even calling it a crawl is generous. We made the pilot of Seinfeld. We weren't even really picked up. They just aired the pilot in a dead spot on the schedule, and a critic wrote about it. And a critic wrote about it, and all of a sudden it got another chance at NBC. And it it was a show that had a very small and I guess dedicated niche audience when it first began. And that niche audience was if I'm correct, I mean, this memory is a crazy thing, and I've learned to not believe everything I think is a good memory. But my memory is that our niche audience were basically men between the ages of 18 and, say, 32. And because we were getting that audience, that was the audience advertisers really wanted to get to. And they were not usually television watchers. More women were watching television, and more older people were watching television. So the fact that our show was specifically playing to that very desirable niche meant that we could always get somebody to advertise on our show, and so we stayed on. And we stayed on, and the network stayed with us, and Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David stayed true to their vision. And they just kept producing good show after good show after good show, and eventually it caught on. But it really wasn't until well into the third season when they put us on after Cheers, and that was a real prime spotlighted slot. That's when the show began to really take on a life. And yeah, I guess once that happened, the change was fast and furious. I don't think we all felt that necessarily. I think we always felt like, might not be here next week, so enjoy it while you can. I don't think it went to anybody's head for the most part, and I know that it never came on to. It was never an attitude that permeated our stage when we were shooting the show. We always felt, Jerry Seinfeld once described us as the world's greatest garage band. It's like four guys are playing in the garage for themselves, and the neighborhood's going, these guys aren't bad. And that's what it felt like.
Yeah, I see where you guys are going over to Netflix. The show is, which means you're going to have this whole new, 12 to 22-year-old audience that maybe hasn't been exposed to Seinfeld like I did in the 90s and 2000s. Is that exciting for you?
Well, I got to tell you, the longevity and the relative diversity of the Seinfeld audience has always surprised me. I am shocked that people still find the show. I know it's my kids are just recently out of college, but I know it was a huge college show when they were going to school. It seems to be something that every next young generation seems to pick up on and enjoy. And for the life of me, I'm very proud of the show, but I don't know why. I don't know how it still feels relevant in some way to younger audiences, to the point where we don't have cell phones in that show. I mean, it's almost like from a different world. But the fact that it continues to gather audience and amuse all is kind of fabulous. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm never not cheering for the show. I'm never not longevity. We made it with love, and we worked hard at it, and we're very proud of it. So the fact that it keeps performing for people is just a kind of a vindication of all that.
I'm going to get a little advice from you here because as a performer, I do stand up and I play music, but I've been studying masterclass magic. Now, Jason, I'm not good. I work hard. I'm doing. It's just I'm repetition. I'm doing. Oh, what? Because you are a magician.
Sure.
What in the world do I need to do to get just okay at it? So when I'm performing in a theater of 1,000 or 2,000 people, that I don't look like a complete fool.
Wow, Bobby, that's tough. All right, so magic has two components. There's the technical proficiency of actually technically doing the mechanics of the trick well, and that's just practice. I mean, it's really diligent practice, getting in front of a mirror or filming yourself and making sure that from every angle that you need it to be clean and perfect, it's right, the timing of it is right. And a lot of the stuff that I did, I would check out with other magicians, and they would really offer some pretty great ideas, or at least things to consider. But the other part of it that I always thought about, and I think it's the reason why when I did my act at the Magic Castle, I wound up winning the Magician of the Year award for it. It's not that my tricks were so unusual or spectacular, but I thought about the presentation a great deal. I thought about the question that an audience member has is, why should I believe in this? Why should I even invest in this? What is your excuse, oh great magician, for being able to do these things? Or what premise do you want to put it in? The problem with most magic is magicians think that the illusion itself is enough to get excited about if you're watching it. And what great performers, let's say like David Copperfield. David Copperfield does great grand illusions, but what makes them so memorable and spectacular is he creates emotional context around it so that you feel something because the trick is happening. It's not just, oh, wow, look at that. That was pretty flashy. Look, I took an ace of spades, put it on top of the deck, and now it's the ace of diamonds. That's cool, but it's a trick. And you go, oh, that was cool. But if you create a context for, why the symbol of a diamond was so important to your mother. She never had the diamond. She lost her diamond ring, and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, Mama, I can't give you a diamond ring, but I can turn things into diamonds anywhere you look. And now you turn over the ace of diamonds. Now there's an emotional context to it. So I will tell you, get really good at the mechanics, but then find a story or a reason or a premise that makes it important for your audience to want to believe in that trick.
All right, I'm still in the mechanics part of it, but it sounds like you just want me to do the trick nude. That's what I took there.
Well, you know what? Now you do that, there's an emotional context, I promise you.
I do want to ask because I was such a fan of both King of Queens and on Seinfeld, and I saw you tweeting about him, Jerry Stiller. He made me laugh out loud, and I don't laugh out loud that often when I'm by myself. By yourself, It's hard to laugh out loud. But Jerry Stiller would make me laugh out loud on both of those shows. And I know you worked with him and loved him. How funny was he to be around?
He definitely was funny if he wanted to be. I mean, if he was telling a story, a funny tale, he knew how to tell that story. There's no question. But one of the things that was so lovable about Jerry Stiller is that he was very unpresuming about anything. He didn't think of himself as a great anything. He didn't think of himself as a great man, a great actor, a great comedian. He was always more interested in you, wanting to know about you, expressing his thrill to be invited to participate in any given thing. He would talk about things he had done, but not with a sense of boast, but more with a sense of, here were the people I got to work with, here were the things I got to see, here were the things I learned. There was the humility of the guy. You can't be incredibly, incredibly humble and on, in the way that a comic is. They just don't go together. So Jerry Stiller would turn off Jerry Stiller in order to become Frank Costanza and Arthur Spooner and all the other people he would play, because he was a very kind of not shy in that. I mean, he could talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. There was no problem, but he was never boastful. He never sort of stole the spotlight. He was sharing his life with you in a way that he hoped would be meaningful. So funny, yeah. The minute he got up on a stage, the minute we would step on the set, the things that would come out of his mouth, the way he would find to navigate these roles. I mean, I said it in the little piece in the Times. He would kill us. You go watch the bloopers of our show, and we are constantly just falling out because he was so unpredictable and so wonderful and unique, and he killed us. He was just. I wish everybody could have had the real Jerry Stiller in their life for a minute, because he was just a guy you would instantly have fallen in love with.
Dang. We have two final questions for you. I know Amy, this is my co-host, and Amy, when we said you were coming on, she was like, "Oh, from Pretty Woman?" And so that was how she identified you. So Amy, I know you have a question for him. What would you like to ask him?
Well, yeah. So don't ask me why, but my parents let me see Pretty Woman at 9 years old.
Wow.
And it's one of my favorite movies ever since. I don't think I understood exactly what her role was. Like, I didn't understand she was a prostitute. But
Sure.
Do people ever, I'm sure you get the George, but do you ever get, "Hey, Stucky"?
I don't get "Hey, Stucky." I do get a fair amount still. When the movie first came out, Amy, it was shocking to all of. Now, this is a story I actually tell when I do my Q&A show, which I'm so thrilled is the one piece of my life that people are still booking. I've been doing online events, fundraisers, and corporate events, and in fact, I have one in a couple hours. And this almost always comes up as people want to know about Pretty Woman. And when the movie came out, the success of it was a surprise to all of us. We had a great time filming it, but it was a little bit of something that was cobbled together by Gary Marshall as we were doing it. He would deviate from the script. It had a very different feel from the script. And we didn't really know what the movie was going to be. And when it finally came out, everybody's performance was really created in the editing room by Gary Marshall. And I realized that my performance, of all the variations I had given him, was the one that was unbelievably despicable.
Oh, yeah.
So I was really still a relatively unknown actor. I was mostly doing commercials and Broadway and off-Broadway. And I started walking the streets of New York, and women would come up to me with blood in their eyes going, "I hate you. I got hit. I got spit at." People were women in particular were so rightfully mad at me for, being the jerk who tried to assault Julia Roberts. And I would always say, "Never touched her. It's a screen illusion. I never touched her, I swear." Fortunately, over the years, and because of, I'm sure, Seinfeld, that image of me as only this horrible misogynistic assaulter has dissipated somewhat, or been mitigated, thank God. But yeah, it was rough, and people do still remember that movie. And I have heard from people that they first saw the movie when they were 10, 11, 12, and I go,
Oh.
"Really? That's a bit of a youthful indoctrination, but okay." And I understand why that movie, as sort of tone deaf as it is to the realities of what has emerged through the Me Too movement and women finding their voice and speaking up, the movie, can seem to be a bit wrong-headed, but it was made with really loving intention, and the performances of Richard Gere and especially Julia Roberts are just you cannot not be captivated by that. They are just so dazzling together, and she is so effervescent and winning always, but certainly in that role, that it's hard not to love that movie.
Well,
it's still out there.
I'm going to say this before I ask your final question. You're such a good guy, such a giving guy. You did a Zoom as a fundraiser with Julia Louis-Dreyfus and raised a bunch of money there. Your charity poker games. I mean, you just do a lot. When you speak, you're kind. And again, you didn't have to come on and do the show with us. So before I get to the last question, I just want to say thank you. I'm a big fan, and it's always nice when you meet people that you always thought were awesome, and they are just as awesome as you always thought they were. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, too.
1998, 22 years ago today, Seinfeld aired its final episode. After the finale aired and all the press comes out versus today, how did it feel then as to what people said versus how does it feel now from that show being over?
You mean in response to that?
To the finale, yeah, in the jail
episode?
cell. Yeah.
I think, I could be wrong about this, but anecdotally, when people talk to me about it, I think there is much more affection now for the ending and the finale episode than there was when it first came out. Julia and I actually talked about this. There was so much hype about the finale. What was the finale going to be? And it was elevated to such crazy level that I can't imagine that anything would have satisfied anyone, no matter what we had done. But I think the impression was that initially that the finale was not as rewarding as people had hoped. But over time, I hear more and more that actually people really did enjoy it. And hopefully they enjoyed it for the reason that I thought it was so special, which was we were not a terribly sentimental show. In fact, we were anything but a sentimental show. And there was not a lot of huggy and touchy-feely kind of stuff that would happen on our stage. But Larry David, who had left our show, he did not produce it for the last 2 years, but he came back and he wrote that finale episode. And what he did was find an organic story that would allow all those amazing guests that had been a part of our show over the years, whether they had done multiple episodes or just one episode, where they really contributed to the lexicon of Seinfeld and really elevated our show and made it the success it was. He found a way to have them all back so that they could be a part of this ending and part of the celebration, and we could all have that together. And I adored that. That made everything about it so special, at least to me, that I always looked at the finale through that lens and thought it was magnificent. And apparently now when people watch it, they sort of have that feeling too. Oh my gosh, look at all the great sort of what we call the bench of Seinfeld. Were back and gathered into one episode, and that had never happened before. So it's received with a lot more affection now than it initially was.
You can follow Jason on Instagram, JAlexander1959. Again, I can see you right now. I'm gracious and grateful and everything I could be. So thank you for your time, and I hope you have.
My pleasure, Bobby. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet Amy too.
Yeah, I hope you have an awesome night. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you. Take care.